On a cool, misty October evening in 1923, I walked through the gates of New Orleans' St. Louis Cemetery, the oldest in the city. The dense fog wrapped around the ancient tombs and mausoleums like a cloak, dimming the glow of the lanterns that lined the paths. As a graduate student fascinated by the paranormal history of this storied city, the cemetery was not just a research site, but a portal to a past pulsating with untold stories and mysteries. The St. Louis Cemetery, with its crumbling stones and eerie silence, often felt like stepping back in time. Legends of spirits and hauntings were etched into every corner of this sacred ground, where famous figures like the voodoo queen Marie Laveau were laid to rest. Tonight, my goal was to capture ambient sounds for my thesis on paranormal phenomena. But part of me also hoped to experience something that would make a believer out of even the most skeptical mind. As I ventured deeper, navigating by the soft glow of my flashlight, the mist became thicker, swallowing the weak beams of light and muffling the sounds of the city beyond the walls. Each step forward seemed to echo into a void, creating a sense of isolation that was both thrilling and unnerving. Then, a whisper broke through the silence, subtle yet clear, carrying my name on the breeze. "Benjamin," it called, a voice so soft yet unmistakably real, it halted me in my tracks. I turned quickly, my heart pounding, expecting to find someone behind me, but there was only the fog and the silent watch of the tombs. Shaking off a chill, I convinced myself it was just the wind, or perhaps my mind playing tricks under the influence of the ghost stories I had studied. Yet, as I continued on, the voice came again, this time more urgent. "Benjamin, look deeper," it urged, leading me toward an old section of the cemetery seldom visited by the living. Compelled by the voice, I found myself standing before an ancient crypt, its door slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. The air around, it was noticeably colder, and I could feel the faintest touch of a breeze that seemed to emanate from within. With a mix of dread and curiosity, I pushed the door further open, peering into the shadowy depths. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. My flashlight flickered, as if struggling against an unseen force, casting eerie shadows along the walls that seemed to move just at the edge of my vision. Just then, a cold hand seemed to brush against mine, not menacing but startling in its unexpectedness, prompting me to withdraw my hand quickly. Yet instead of retreating, I stepped further into the crypt, driven by a need to understand whose voice beckoned and what secrets lay buried in this forgotten part of the cemetery. Inside the crypt, the air was stale, with a palpable sense of time suspended. The walls, lined with niches, held remnants of offerings, faded flowers, beads, and small trinkets left long ago by mourners of souls long past. My flashlight's beam trembled slightly in my hand as I explored deeper, the echoes of my footsteps mingling with the soft, incessant dripping of moisture from the ceiling. As I ventured further, the air grew colder, a sign often told in ghostly tales as a presence of the otherworldly. The whisper that had guided me here became a constant murmur, like a congregation whispering prayers in unison. It seemed as though the very air was charged with anticipation, waiting for something, or someone to reveal itself. Then from the shadows, a figure slowly materialized. It was not solid, but a mere wisp of smoke, forming the shape of a woman dressed in the garb of the 1800s. Her features were soft yet sorrowful, and her eyes, a piercing blue, seemed to look right through me. "Benjamin," she spoke, her voice clear and melodic, yet carrying the weight of centuries. "You have come seeking answers, but are you prepared for the truths buried within these walls?" I stood frozen, my mind racing to process the apparition before me. Was she a spirit bound to this crypt, or a figment of my overactive imagination? "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "I am Genevieve," once a caretaker. "Of these sacred grounds," she replied, her form becoming more defined in the dim light. "The secrets of the dead are mine to keep, but to one who listens, they can be revealed." She motioned to an old wooden chest in the corner of the crypt, covered in cobwebs and dust. Within that chest lies a diary, my diary, filled with the untold stories of those who rest here. But beware, for some truths are not meant for the living. Compelled by an insatiable curiosity, I approached the chest. With each step, the temperature dropped, and the whispering voices grew louder, urging me forward. I reached out, my hands trembling, and opened the chest. Inside, amidst layers of old lace and lavender, lay a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age. As I opened the diary, the whispering ceased and a profound silence enveloped the crypt. The first page bore the inscription, "Genevieve Arcade, 1823. The entries detailed everyday life in early New Orleans, but soon delved into darker subjects, tales of lost loves, vengeful spirits, and curses that lingered on through generations. Absorbed in the diary, I barely noticed the change in the air, a warmth that seemed to seep back into the crypt. Genevieve's apparition faded slowly, her parting words a soft echo. "Share these stories with care, for they carry the weight of souls long departed." As dawn approached, I emerged from the crypt, the diary tucked under my arm. A newfound respect for the whispers of the past etched deep within me. The cemetery no longer felt menacing, but rather a sacred archive of lives and loves intertwined with the city's vibrant history. Carrying Genevieve's diary, the early morning light welcomed me back to the realm of the living. The mist that had so densely covered St. Louis Cemetery began to lift, revealing the solemn beauty of the daybreak. Though my night had been filled with ghostly encounters and revelations from the past, the city of New Orleans was awakening, blissfully unaware of the spectral dramas unfolding in its oldest cemetery. I made my way back through the cemetery gates, clutching the diary as if it were a sacred relic. Each step felt heavier, laden with the responsibility Genevieve had entrusted to me. As I walked, a curious figure caught my eye, a gravedigger, old and stooped, working silently among the tombs. His presence wasn't unusual in a cemetery, but something about him seemed out of place, almost as if he belonged to another era, compelled by a mix of intrigue and an academic duty to gather stories. I approached him. His tools were antiquated, his clothes tattered and faded as if worn for decades. He paused his work and looked up as I neared, his eyes reflecting a knowledge far deeper than the simple graves he tended. "Morning, sir," I greeted him, my voice disrupting the serene silence. "I couldn't help but notice your work. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" "I'm researching the history of this place," he nodded slowly, setting his shovel against an old oak tree. "Many stories lie buried in these grounds," he said, his voice a raspy whisper. "Some are better left undisturbed." Curious, I pressed on, "Have you ever encountered anything unusual in your time here?" The gravedigger chuckled dryly, a sound that seemed to stir the leaves around us. "Unusual doesn't begin to cover it, son. This cemetery is old, older than the city itself in spirit. The dead don't always rest easy, especially not here." As he spoke, he gestured towards a distant crypt, its iron gates rusted and overgrown with ivy. "That there's the resting place of a spirit not keen on being forgotten. Disturbed her once, and I swear the ground itself tried to swallow me whole." Intrigued and somewhat unnerved, I made a mental note to visit the crypt. "Have you seen many spirits then?" I asked, eager to collect more anecdotes for my thesis. He sighed, looking back at the graves he tended. "More than my mind cares to remember, but beware, young scholar. Not all spirits are as forthcoming as Genevieve. Some are shrouded in darkness, bound by secrets that can twist the soul." Before I could inquire further, a chilling gust swept through the cemetery. rustling the pages of the diary in my hands. When I looked up, the gravedigger was gone, his shovel left leaning against the tree as if he'd vanished into thin air. Shaken, I approached the tree, half expecting him to reappear. But he was truly gone, leaving me with more questions than answers, and a crypt that beckoned ominously in the growing light of dawn. With the gravedigger's sudden disappearance still clouding my thoughts, I turned my attention to the crypt he had pointed out. It stood apart from the others, ensconced in shadows, even as the sun began to climb higher in the sky. A feeling of unease washed over me as I approached it, the air growing inexplicably colder with each step. This crypt, neglected and overgrown with ivy, seemed to pulse with a quiet malevolence. The iron gate creaked mournfully as I pushed it open, half expecting to find something or someone waiting inside. Instead, there was only darkness and a thick layer of dust that spoke of decades without visitors. I hesitated on the threshold, recalling the gravedigger's warning about the spirit that did not appreciate being disturbed. Drawing a deep breath, I stepped inside, the diary clutched tightly under my arm as a talisman against the unknown. My flashlight sliced through the darkness, revealing faded inscriptions and ornate sarcophagi. The air was stale, filled with the scent of mold and the indefinable aroma of antiquity. As I ventured deeper, my light fell on a particularly elaborate sarcophagus that seemed to command the space. The name on the plaque was worn away by time, but the aura of power it exuded was undeniable. I reached out, my fingers tracing the cold stone edges, and that's when I heard it. A soft sobbing, echoing through the crypt. The sound was so human, so filled with sorrow, that for a moment I forgot the spectral nature of my surroundings. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. Then, in a voice that made the air tremble, a reply came, "Why do you disturb my rest?" I stepped back, my mind racing. The spirit of the crypt was awake, and I was intruding. "I mean no disrespect," I said quickly. "I'm here only to learn, to share your story with those who will honor your memory." There was a pause, and then, surprisingly, the voice softened. "Then learn you shall, but beware the truths you unearth here," it warned. Encouraged yet cautious, I asked about the spirit's identity and her story. What followed was a tale of love and betrayal, of a life cut tragically short and a spirit bound to the earthly realm by unfulfilled promises and secret grief. As the spirit spoke, the oppressive atmosphere of the crypt seemed to lighten, the shadows retreating as if giving respect to her words. When the tale was done, the spirit whispered, "Now go, and tread lightly upon the memories of the dead." The air warmed slightly, the crypt no longer feeling like a tomb, but a bridge to the past that I'd been privileged to cross. I left the crypt with a profound sense of humility, the diary now filled with another story that begged to be told. As I emerged into the daylight, the cemetery no longer felt menacing but sacred, a place where every stone and shadow had a story, waiting for someone to listen. Fresh from the crypt and laden with the stories of the past, I continued my exploration of St. Louis Cemetery. The sun was now fully risen, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the tombs. With each step, the weight of the cemetery's history seemed to press closer, whispering through the rustling leaves and the ornate ironwork of the graves. As I wandered, I came upon an area I hadn't explored before. This part of the cemetery was older, the inscriptions on the stones more eroded, the stories they held nearly lost to time. Among these, one particular mausoleum caught my eye. It was more modest than the others, but it was adorned with cryptic symbols that seemed out of place among the usual Christian iconography. Intrigued, I approached, noting the air grew tangibly colder as I drew near. The symbols were a mixture of astrological signs and what appeared to be alchemical symbols. I pulled out Genevieve's diary, comparing the markings with anything she might have mentioned. To my astonishment, there was a sketch of the very same symbols in the diary, accompanied by a warning: "Beware the bearer of the hidden mark, for their pact with the shadow is not easily broken." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I looked around, half expecting to see someone watching me, but I was alone, or so I thought. Just as I turned back to the mausoleum, a soft voice broke the silence. "Curiosity can be a heavy burden for the unprepared," it said. I spun around, and there stood a woman, her appearance as timeless as the symbols on the stone. Her eyes held a depth that suggested centuries of knowledge, and her presence seemed to make the very air around us stand still. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am a keeper of secrets, much like the historian whose diary you hold," she replied, nodding towards the book under my arm. "But not all secrets are meant to be shared with the world." "Why not?" I pressed, my academic instincts pushing me to uncover more. "Some truths are too powerful, too dangerous. They can change the course of history, or they can destroy it," she said, her gaze intense. "You must choose wisely what you unearth and what you reveal." Her warning echoed Genevieve's words in the diary, and I realized that my quest for knowledge might lead me into deeper waters than I had imagined. The woman stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "I will show you something," she said, "but you must promise to tread carefully with the knowledge." Nodding, I agreed, unsure of what was to come. She led me to the back of the mausoleum, where she traced her fingers over one of the symbols, and suddenly the ground beneath us began to shift. The ground's subtle tremor beneath our feet intensified, stirring the fallen leaves around the mausoleum. As the woman traced the symbols, a low, grinding noise emerged, the sound of stone against stone. A section of the mausoleum floor, hidden beneath layers of dirt and moss, began to move, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "This leads to the catacombs beneath the cemetery," she explained, her voice a blend of caution and reverence. "Few know of its existence, and fewer still dare to venture below." Heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement, I followed her as she navigated the staircase with an eerie familiarity. The air grew cooler and damper as we descended, the only light coming from the flashlight I had fortunately kept in my pocket. The catacombs were a labyrinth of narrow passageways lined with bones and faded inscriptions, a silent testimony to the city's forgotten dead. "Why are we here?" I asked, my voice echoing slightly off the ancient walls. "To show you the weight of secrets," she replied, stopping before an alcove where a particularly ornate coffin lay. She motioned to the coffin, its surface etched with more symbols, similar to those on the mausoleum above. Inside lies a man whose knowledge was so profound, so dangerous, it changed the fabric of his reality. His name has been lost to time, but not his legacy. With a sense of trepidation, I watched as she opened the coffin to reveal not a body, but a collection of ancient manuscripts and artifacts, glowing faintly with an inexplicable light. "These are the lost scrolls of the Creole Magi," she announced, her voice a mix of pride and solemnity. "Their power is immense, capable of altering minds and bending the will of history." "Why show me this?" I inquired, my curiosity piqued but wary of the implications. "Because you, like me, seek to understand the unseen currents that shape our world," she said. "But with such knowledge comes great responsibility. You must decide whether to reveal these secrets or protect them." As I stood there, contemplating the gravity of her words, the catacombs seemed to close in around us. The air felt charged with an ancient power, whispering of old secrets and older curses. It was overwhelming, yet undeniably compelling. The woman watched me, her expression unreadable. "Take one of the scrolls," she urged. "Learn from it, but remember the cost of this knowledge. With a cautious hand, I reached into the coffin and selected a scroll, its parchment warm to the touch. As soon as my fingers brushed the ancient text, a surge of visions flashed before my eyes, visions of past lives, hidden truths, and the shadowy depths of human desire. The journey back to the surface felt like emerging from a dream. The daylight seemed harsher, the sounds of the living louder. I left the cemetery that day with the scroll tucked securely under my arm, aware that my life, and perhaps the lives, of others might never be the same. Carrying the scroll from the catacombs, I walked the sunlit streets of New Orleans, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The scroll's visions had not ceased. Instead, they whispered incessantly, echoing through my consciousness, revealing flashes of forgotten histories and hidden realms that blurred the lines between reality and myth. The weight of the ancient secrets I now possessed felt both exhilarating and terrifying. By nightfall, I found myself drawn back to St. Louis Cemetery, compelled by an urgent need to understand more about the scroll and its cryptic messages. As the clock struck midnight, I entered the gates, the familiar mist enveloping me like a cloak. Tonight I was not alone. Clara, my closest friend and fellow researcher, joined me. Her fascination with the paranormal had always matched my own, and she was eager to witness firsthand the strange phenomena I had recounted. We set up our vigil near the mausoleum where I first met the mysterious keeper of secrets. With our equipment ready, recorders, cameras, and an array of sensors, we prepared to document any occurrences, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural forces at play. The cemetery at midnight was a realm of shadows and whispers. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city. Clara and I sat quietly, our senses heightened, waiting for anything to happen. As hours ticked by, the temperature around us dropped sharply, a common sign of spectral presence. Clara's breath became visible in the chilly air, and I noticed a thin layer of frost forming on the gravestones nearby. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice tinged with both excitement and fear. Before I could reply, a soft glow appeared at the base of the mausoleum. It grew steadily, illuminating the cryptic symbols carved into the stone. The air around us vibrated with energy, and the equipment began to whir and beep, signaling a spike in electromagnetic activity. Clara and I watched in awe as the glow coalesced into the form of a woman, the same keeper of secrets I had encountered before. Her appearance was serene, yet her eyes bore an intensity that seemed to pierce through the veil of night. "You have returned," she said, her voice echoing around us, "and you have brought another." "Yes," I responded, steadying my voice. "We seek to understand the powers contained within the scroll and how they relate to the spirits here." The spectral figure nodded slowly. "The scroll you possess is part of a larger tapestry, interwoven with the fates of many who rest here. Tonight, you must choose whether to delve deeper into this mystery or to let it rest undisturbed. The choice was mine, but the decision weighed heavily on me. As I contemplated, the figure began to fade, her final words a mere whisper, "Beware, for some truths are better left unexplored." As the spectral figure of the Keeper of Secrets faded into the mist, the weight of her warning hung in the air, thick as the fog that enveloped us. Clara and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement that despite the risks, our thirst for knowledge was too great to turn back now. We decided to delve deeper into the secrets held by the scroll and the cemetery. With renewed determination, I unfolded the ancient scroll once more under the soft glow of our lanterns. The text, written in a cryptic amalgam of symbols and archaic languages, seemed to pulse with a faint light of its own. As I traced the lines with my fingers, the words began to shimmer, coalescing into images that projected into the mist around us. The images were ghostly and ephemeral, but depicted scenes of New Orleans' past that no history book had ever recorded. There were rituals and secret gatherings, shadowy figures wielding powers that bent the laws of nature, and crypts that served as portals to realms beyond our understanding. These visions, they're not just stories, they're memories, I murmured, awestruck by the clarity and depth of the scenes unfolding before us. Clara, equally captivated, nodded, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. But whose memories, and why are they tied to the scroll? As if in response to her question, the air around us grew colder, and a new figure emerged from the mist. A man dressed in the garb of the late 1800s, his eyes sorrowful, yet burning with an inner fire. "They are my memories," he said, his voice resonant and clear, "and they are a warning." He introduced himself as Jean-Baptiste, a former priest and scholar of the arcane arts who had once protected the city from dark forces. The scroll, he explained, was a key, a means to access the accumulated wisdom and power of those who had stood watch over New Orleans through the ages. "But with such power comes great danger," Jean-Baptiste cautioned. "It can protect the city, or it can bring about its destruction." The revelation was overwhelming, and I felt the gravity of our discovery pressing down upon me. "What should we do with it?" I asked, the scroll feeling heavier in my hands. "That choice lies with you," Jean-Baptiste replied. "But know this, the forces contained within this scroll are sought by many, not all of whom wish to protect the city." With that, he stepped back, his form dissolving into the night, leaving us with more questions than answers. Clara and I packed up our equipment, the scroll carefully wrapped and tucked away, its secrets now both a burden and a mission. As we left the cemetery, the first light of dawn was breaking over New Orleans. The city stirred, oblivious to the nocturnal drama that had unfolded in its ancient heart. But for us, everything had changed. We had touched something timeless, a piece of the city's soul, and we could not unsee what had been revealed. We knew our research had only just begun. There would be more nights, more vigils, and more secrets to uncover. But for now, we walked in silence, each lost in thought, pondering the role we were to play in the unfolding story of New Orleans and its hidden powers. After that night in the cemetery, the city of New Orleans seemed to pulsate with a new rhythm, as if the revelations from the scroll had imbued the streets with a palpable energy. Clara and I spent days poring over ancient texts and interviewing historians, piecing together the fragmented history of the arcane practices that had thrived in the city's underbelly. Yet the more we uncovered, the more we realized how much remained shrouded in shadows. Determined to find more answers, we returned to St. Louis Cemetery under the cloak of nightfall, the air thick with anticipation and the lingering scent of magnolias. Our destination was the crypt of Jean-Baptiste, the spectral priest who had appeared to us. Armed with more questions than ever, we hoped to summon his spirit once more and delve deeper into the mysteries he had revealed. As midnight approached, we set up our equipment around his crypt, the familiar chill of the unseen hanging heavily in the air. The moon cast eerie shadows across the crumbling stones, creating a tapestry of light and darkness that seemed to dance with the rustling leaves. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing our lanterns and plunging us into darkness. A palpable sense of presence enveloped us, and a voice whispered through the night, "You return seeking knowledge, but are you prepared for the burden it carries?" From the darkness emerged a figure, illuminated faintly by the moonlight. It was not Jean-Baptiste this time, but a woman, her visage marked by the passage of time, and her eyes glowing with a spectral light. She introduced herself as Marie, a contemporary of Jean-Baptiste, once a guardian of the city's arcane secrets. Marie's presence was commanding, her aura both awe-inspiring and intimidating. "The path you tread is fraught with peril," she cautioned, her voice echoing around the crypt. "The secrets you seek to uncover are powerful enough to alter the very fabric of reality. Many have lost their way, consumed by the darkness they sought to understand. Despite her warnings, our resolve only strengthened. We need to understand, to protect what Jean-Baptiste and others like you fought so hard to safeguard, I replied, my voice steady despite the fear her words invoked. Marie regarded us for a moment, her expression inscrutable. Then, slowly, she extended her hand, palm up, and from it sprang a small flame that flickered in the night air. "Very well," she said. "If it is knowledge you seek, it is knowledge you shall have. But remember, not all spirits are as benevolent as I, and not all knowledge brings light." With a gesture, she invited us to follow her into the crypt, the flame from her hand casting a warm glow that guided our steps. As we entered the darkness, the air grew heavier, the history of the city pressing close, whispering its secrets. As we followed Marie deeper into the crypt, the walls seemed to whisper with the echoes of the past. The flame in her hand not only illuminated our path, but seemed to animate the shadows, making the old stones tell their stories. The air was thick with the musk of damp earth and decayed flowers, a reminder that we were surrounded by centuries of history. Marie led us to a hidden chamber within the crypt, one that appeared untouched by time. Here, the walls were lined with ancient artifacts and scrolls similar to the one I had found. Each item pulsated with an energy that was almost tangible, as if imbued with life. "This is the sanctum of the arcane," Marie announced, her voice reverberating softly through the chamber. "It is here that the guardians of New Orleans' mystical legacy have come to study and protect the powerful relics you see before you." The artifacts range from beautifully crafted talismans to mysterious, rune-inscribed stones. Marie explained that each held a specific purpose, from warding off evil spirits to enhancing the bearer's understanding of the mystical forces. As we walked through the chamber, Marie stopped before a large, intricately carved mirror. "This mirror is the œil de vérité, the eye of truth," she said. "It shows the true nature of things, unclouded by time or emotion. But be warned, for not all truths are easy to face." Driven by an insatiable curiosity, I asked if I could look into the mirror. Marie nodded, cautioning me to prepare myself for whatever I might see. Taking a deep breath, I stepped in front of the mirror. At first, all I saw was my own reflection, pale and slightly distorted by the ancient glass. But then the surface began to shimmer and the images changed. The mirror revealed scenes from the past, the formation of the Guardians, their battles against dark forces, and the sacrifices they made to keep the city safe. It showed me secrets of the supernatural realm that intertwined with the very foundation of New Orleans. The visions were intense and vivid, flooding my senses with a barrage of emotions and knowledge. As the visions subsided, I stepped back, overwhelmed by what I had seen. Marie placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "The path of knowledge is fraught with challenges," she reminded me gently, "but it is also the path to true understanding and ultimately wisdom." The experience in the sanctum had changed something fundamental within me. I felt a deeper connection to the city and its hidden legacies. As Marie led us out of the chamber, she imparted one final piece of advice. "Guard these secrets well, for they are now part of you, as much as they are part of the history of this place." Emerging from the crypt, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Clara and I knew that our lives were no longer just our own. We were custodians of a profound legacy, and our journey had only just begun. Emerging from the crypt, as the sky began to lighten, Clara and I felt the weight of our new responsibilities. The knowledge and secrets imparted by Marie weren't just academic curiosities. They were a legacy we were now bound to protect and understand. As the city of New Orleans awoke around us, the familiar streets seemed to hold new mysteries, each corner whispering tales of the past, urging us to look deeper. Later that week, while researching at Tulane University's Special Collections Library, I stumbled upon a map. This wasn't just any map, but an old cartographer's detailed rendering of New Orleans from the late 1800s, marked with various esoteric symbols similar to those in Genevieve's diary and the ones Marie had shown us. One symbol in particular caught my eye, a sigil that matched one on the mirror, the Oeil de Vérité in the sanctum of the arcane. Compelled by this discovery, I decided to trace the map's marked locations, hoping they might lead us to more relics or secrets. Clara, ever the intrepid partner, was immediately on board. This could lead us to understand the full scope of the Guardian's influence over New Orleans, she said, her eyes alight with the thrill of the hunt. Our first destination was an unassuming spot in the heart of the French Quarter, now a small, forgotten park shadowed by towering oaks and lined with cobblestone paths. According to the map, a significant relic was buried here, one that had been crucial in rituals that protected the city centuries ago. With shovels and a respectful determination, we began to dig at the spot marked on the map. The ground was tough, its layers thick with history and the remnants of a city that had rebuilt itself time and again. After several hours of careful excavation, our shovels clinked against something solid. Brushing away the dirt, we uncovered a small, iron-bound chest, astonishingly well-preserved. We exchanged glances, the gravity of our find silencing any celebration. Gently, we lifted the chest from its resting place and carried it to a nearby bench. With bated breath, I opened the chest. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, was a relic indeed. A small, intricately carved statuette of a serpent, its eyes set with emeralds that seemed to glow with an inner light. "This must be the Serpent of Protection," Clara whispered, referencing a legend Marie had mentioned, the guardian spirit that was said to ward off evil and misfortune. The statuette was rumored to possess actual protective powers, a tangible piece of the magical history of New Orleans. As we admired the relic, I noticed that the ground where we had dug was starting to emit a faint blue glow. The air around us grew colder, and the feeling of being watched crept over us. We realized then that unearthing the relic had awakened something, a spirit or perhaps a guardian of the relic itself. As the unearthly blue glow intensified, Clara and I felt a presence coalesce in the cool air around the dug-up earth. We instinctively stepped back, the serpent statuette still in hand, as a figure materialized before us. It was neither wholly human nor ghostly, but a spectral amalgam that seemed both ancient and eternally bound to the relic we had just uncovered. The figure spoke in a voice that resonated deep within our bones. "You have awakened me, guardians. Of the present, why have you disturbed my slumber?" Its tone was neither accusing nor welcoming, but carried a weight of immense age and wisdom. I stepped forward, the serpent statuette firm in my grip, and responded with as much courage as I could. "Master, we seek to protect and understand the legacy of New Orleans' arcane guardians. We found this relic through the guidance of the past protectors and hope to continue their work." The spectral guardian studied us for a moment, its form flickering like a candle flame in a gentle breeze. Then, slowly, it nodded. "The Serpent of Protection has not felt the warmth of human hands for over a century. Its power is great and has kept malevolent forces at bay. If you are to be its new keepers, you must prove yourselves worthy." Clara and I exchanged a determined look. "We are ready to do whatever is necessary," she said, her voice steady. The guardian then motioned towards the ground where the relic had been buried. "Rebury the statuette and stand watch over it this night. If it remains undisturbed by dawn and your intentions are true, its guardianship will pass to you." We did as instructed, carefully replacing the Serpent of Protection in its earthen bed and covering it with soil. We then settled in for a vigil, The park around us bathed in moonlight and the occasional flicker of the blue spectral light that seemed to emanate from the burial site. The night passed slowly, filled with the sounds of the city around us and the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. As the hours crept by, our initial anxiety gave way to a meditative calm. It felt as if the park itself, along with the guardian spirit, was watching over us, testing our resolve and our worthiness. Finally, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, we checked the burial site. The ground was undisturbed, the faint glow gone, as if the guardian had retreated back into the depths of time, satisfied with our vigil. Exhausted but exhilarated, we left the park with the first rays of the sun warming the city. The Serpent of Protection was now our responsibility, a powerful ally in our continuing quest to uncover and safeguard the mystical heritage of New Orleans. As we walked home, the city seemed to awaken with us, unaware of the magical undercurrents that flowed beneath its streets. Clara and I knew, however, that our journey had only just begun. We had much to learn and even more to protect. After successfully completing the vigil and becoming the new guardians of the Serpent of Protection, Clara and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We had touched the very heart of New Orleans' mystical past and were now entrusted with one of its most potent relics. Our journey, however, was far from over. We knew there were more secrets hidden within the city, more relics that needed protection, and potentially more spirits that required our attention. Our next clue came unexpectedly while analyzing the serpent statuette. Hidden within its intricate carvings, we discovered a faint inscription that led us to the archives of the historic New Orleans collection. There, buried under dusty ledgers and forgotten manuscripts, we found references to a circle of guardians, a group of individuals from various epochs who had protected the city against dark forces. The archives held a map, not as old as the one that led us to the Serpent, but marked with sites of historical significance that had not been documented in any tourist guide or history book. The map alluded to a site on the outskirts of the city, near the bayous, where the Circle of Guardians supposedly conducted their most crucial rituals. Intrigued and armed with our relentless curiosity, Clara and I set out to explore this new site. The area was secluded, overrun with wild flora, and resonated with a quiet that was almost eerie. As we approached the center of the site, marked by an ancient oak tree, the ground beneath us began to tremble subtly. We carefully excavated the area, and what we found was astonishing. A stone tablet buried just beneath the surface. It was etched with symbols that glowed faintly, pulsating with an energy that suggested they were not just decorative but functional. As we deciphered the symbols, the air around us thickened and the atmosphere charged as if a storm was about to break. The ground shook more violently, and from the tablet a beam of light shot upwards, piercing the canopy of trees and illuminating the sky. Suddenly the environment calmed, and standing before us was a figure, ethereal and majestic. It introduced itself as Helene, a former member of the Circle of Guardians from the 18th century. She had been summoned by our discovery and the activation of the tablet. Helene explained that the tablet was not just a historical artifact, but a key to the nexus of ley lines that converged beneath New Orleans. Lines that carried mystical energies critical to the city's spiritual health. You have unlocked the gateway to understanding how these energies are balanced, she said, her voice imbued with a mix of caution and hope. The revelation was overwhelming, and it cast our role in a new, more daunting light. We were no longer merely academic researchers or casual protectors. We were now pivotal to maintaining the mystical equilibrium of New Orleans. Helene, the spectral guardian from the 18th century, stood before us, her form flickering like a flame in the wind. Her presence was both a blessing and a reminder of the heavy responsibility now placed upon our shoulders. "The ley lines you have uncovered are the lifeblood of this city's spirit," she explained. "They have been guarded and maintained by the Circle for generations, each member sworn to protect this sacred geometry from disruption." As she spoke, the air around us seemed to pulse with the unseen energy of the ley lines. Helene guided us through the symbols on the stone tablet, each one representing a different aspect of the ley line's power and purpose. These symbols are not just marks of the past. They are instructions and warnings. The balance of energies that flow through New Orleans is delicate. If disturbed, it could unleash forces that would seek to exploit or harm the city and its inhabitants. The gravity of this knowledge was immense. Clara and I listened intently, absorbing every word, every warning. We were no longer just historians or researchers. We were custodians of a mystical tradition stretching back centuries. Helene continued, "Your discovery of this tablet has reactivated the ancient safeguards, but it is up to you to ensure they are maintained." She then revealed that there were more tablets, each one linked to a specific ley line around the city. To fully protect New Orleans, you must find and secure all the tablets. This map will guide you. Helene handed us a faded, yet intricately detailed map, showing the ley lines as they weaved through the city, with markers indicating where the other tablets were located. The task was daunting, but as we stood under the ancient oak, the city's sounds in the distance, it felt as though the spirits of all the previous guardians were with us, lending their strength and wisdom. "We will do our best," I promised, a statement that felt like a vow to the city itself. Helene nodded, her form beginning to fade. "I trust you will, guardians of the present. Remember, the spirits of the past are always here, should you need guidance." With those final words, she disappeared, leaving Clara and me alone with the map and a new path laid out before us. As dawn broke, casting a golden light over the bayous, we headed back to the city, the weight of our new responsibilities mingling with a sense of purpose. New Orleans was more than just a city. It was a living, breathing entity, and we were a part of its ongoing story. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but also with the deep satisfaction of knowing that we were part of something larger than ourselves, protectors of a mystical legacy that defined the very essence of New Orleans. With the map and mission entrusted to us by Helene, Clara, and I embarked on our quest to locate and secure the remaining stone tablets associated with the ley lines of New Orleans. Our first destination was a location deep within the heart of the city's Garden District, an area known for its opulent old mansions and deep-rooted history, now whispered to hold more than just tales of the past. As we navigated through the intricate lattice of live oaks and wrought iron fences, the pulse of the ley line beneath the district was palpable, like a steady heartbeat beneath the cobblestone streets. The map led us to a secluded mansion, abandoned yet majestic, with ivy creeping up its stone walls, partly concealing its grandeur and the secrets it held. The mansion's garden was overgrown, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and a hint of something more ancient, a whisper of the past. According to the map, the tablet was buried near an old fountain, now dry and filled with leaves. We set to work, carefully clearing the area and preparing to dig, aware of the eyes of the mansion seeming to watch our every move. As our shovels pierced the earth, the ground vibrated slightly, an acknowledgement or perhaps a warning. The deeper we dug, the stronger the vibrations became until, finally, our tools clinked against something solid. Brushing away the dirt, we uncovered another stone tablet, this one adorned with the emblem of a crescent moon, the symbol intricately linked to New Orleans itself. Just as we extracted the tablet, a gust of wind swept through the garden, rustling the leaves and whispering secrets in a language only the city knew. The air around us cooled, and from the shadows of the mansion a figure emerged, a woman dressed in the garb of the late 19th century, her expression somber yet kind. She introduced herself as Marguerite, another guardian from a bygone era, her spirit bound to the mansion and the tablet we had just unearthed. "You have done well to reach this far," she said, her voice echoing with a timeless wisdom. "But the journey ahead is fraught with more dangers than you have yet faced." Marguerite explained that each tablet was protected not just by physical barriers, but by spiritual ones as well. "The tablets are anchors," she continued, "binding the energies that converge beneath this city. They protect it from forces that would seek to exploit its power." She offered to aid us, to provide knowledge and guidance as we sought the remaining tablets. Her presence was reassuring, a sign that we were not alone in our quest, and that the guardians of the past were with us, guiding our steps. As the sun set over the garden district, casting long shadows across the garden, we felt a renewed sense of determination. With Marguerite's spirit accompanying us, we prepared to continue our journey, knowing that each step forward was a step deeper into the heart of New Orleans' hidden history. Under Marguerite's spectral guidance, Clara and I ventured deeper into the mysteries of New Orleans' ley lines. With each tablet we uncovered, the historical tapestry of the city became more intricate, revealing layers of mystical influence that had silently shaped its culture and people for centuries. Our next destination was an ancient crypt hidden beneath one of the city's oldest cathedrals, right in the heart of the French Quarter. The cathedral, usually bustling with tourists, took on a solemn stillness as we descended into its underbelly late at night, the only sounds our footsteps echoing on the old stone steps and our breaths tense with anticipation. The crypt was vast and shadowy, with the air cool and thick with the musk of incense long burned out. The map indicated that a ley line nexus point was located directly beneath the altar, and as such, the tablet was hidden nearby. Using a pendulum, a tool that had been part of Marguerite's arsenal, and now ours, we located the precise spot. A hidden alcove behind the altar, veiled by an ancient tapestry depicting the city's founding. With Marguerite's whispered incantations to steady our hands, we moved the tapestry aside and found a narrow crevice in the wall. Inside, protected by spells that whispered warnings and begged for caution, lay the next tablet. This one bore the symbol of a pelican, the state bird, known for its protective nature, a fitting emblem for the guardianship it represented. As I reached out to retrieve the tablet, a surge of energy rippled through the crypt, the air shimmering as if heated by the summer sun. The ground trembled, not with threat, but as if acknowledging the rightness of our actions. With the tablet safely in our possession, Marguerite's form flickered with what seemed like approval. With each step, you restore more than just balance. You revive the Guardian's legacy, Marguerite said, her voice echoing off the stone walls. But be wary, for each tablet also awakens interest from those who would use this power for darker purposes. Her warning was timely. As we ascended back to the cathedral, the early morning light revealed signs of disturbance at the entrance. Footprints in the dust, not ours, suggested that someone else was aware of our endeavors and perhaps following our trail. With the third tablet secure in our pack, Clara and I planned our next steps carefully. We needed to find the remaining tablets before they could fall into the wrong hands. Each location brought us closer to completing our quest, but also deeper into danger. As we left the cathedral, the city awoke around us, oblivious to the drama unfolding in its shadows. We were more determined than ever to protect New Orleans, armed with ancient knowledge and guided by the spirits of its past guardians. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but also ripe with the promise of finally understanding the full extent of the city's hidden powers. The signs were no longer subtle. After retrieving the third tablet beneath the cathedral, Clara and I noticed an unmistakable shift. It wasn't just the heightened sensations or the deepening dreams filled with voices of the past. It was something far more concrete. We were being watched. Whether it was an unseen presence in a mirror's edge or the echo of footsteps where none should be, the message was clear. Someone or something had taken notice of our quest. We returned to St. Louis Cemetery to regroup, choosing Genevieve's crypt as our meeting point. It felt like the spiritual center of everything we'd unearthed, the place where this journey had begun and where it continued to unfold. The air was still, charged with a quiet reverence as we laid out the 3 tablets we had recovered. The serpent, the crescent moon, and the pelican. Each radiated a unique energy, protective, illuminating, unyielding, and together they created a low, harmonic vibration that hummed through the ground beneath us. It was there, in that strange resonance, that a new voice emerged. 3 awakened. The balance begins to shift. We turned, and from the mist stepped a figure neither Holy Spirit nor man, cloaked in black, with glowing veins of silver snaking beneath his skin like living roots. He introduced himself as Calix, a watcher, born of the ley lines themselves, a being formed not of blood and bone, but of energy and intention. He had been awakened by our interference, and was not pleased. "You've disturbed centuries of careful silence," Calix said, his voice like the chime of a temple bell, deep and reverent. "Every action you've taken has echoed across realms." Clara, ever bold, stepped forward. "We were entrusted with this task. The guardians before us guided us here." Calix studied her with a gaze that felt like it reached into the core of her soul. And they were bound by a pact forged in sacrifice and sealed with silence. He told us about the original circle of guardians, not just scholars or mystics, but protectors who had given up everything. Lives, families, memories, even their own deaths. They had sealed powerful knowledge to keep New Orleans safe, but only through a pact made with entities far older than the city itself. Our awakening of the tablets had begun to unseal that covenant. "You cannot carry on without making your own pact," Calix warned, "this time willingly. If you choose to continue, you will be bound to the city's heart, its pain, its chaos, its power. You will live with one foot in the light, the other in shadow." His offer, or threat, was clear. Accept the pact and protect the city from forces that would surely awaken next. Refuse, and the protection offered by the tablets would fade, their energies scattered, the ley lines vulnerable to corruption. I looked to Clara. She didn't speak, but I saw the answer in her eyes. So did Calix. "The choice must be made beneath the tomb of echoes," he said, "when you are ready." And just like that, he vanished, leaving behind the scent of rain and ozone. The tomb of echoes was not marked on any map, not even the one Hélène had given us. We only knew of its location through whispers in Genevieve's diary and the fragments of riddles buried in the footnotes of Marguerite's stories. It was described as a place beneath the cemetery where time folds, a space between breath and silence, a chamber where the spirits of every guardian, past, present, and lost, could still be heard if one knew how to listen. It took us days. We followed signs no living person would recognize. Strange bird formations, sudden drops in temperature, flickers of light beneath crypt doors. It wasn't until we returned to the oldest section of St. Louis Cemetery, near a collapsed family tomb, that we finally felt it, the unmistakable thrum of power deep below. We descended through a narrow shaft, half covered by rubble. It felt like crawling into a throat carved from stone, with the weight of the dead pressing in from every side. But eventually, the tight tunnel opened into a cavernous space carved from limestone and shadow. The Tomb of Echoes was real. The chamber pulsed, with layered whispers, not chaotic, but woven together in a soft chorus, fragments of oaths, warnings, regrets, and names. The walls were covered in carvings from every era, Spanish, Creole, African, French, and symbols that defied classification. There was no torchlight here, but the chamber glowed faintly, as though the very stone remembered sunlight. In the center stood a dais, cracked and worn with age, encircled by 13 sigils representing the original Circle of Guardians. Clara and I stood before it, the 3 recovered tablets heavy in our satchel. As we placed each one on the dais, the whispering grew louder, becoming voices. Not only those of the Guardians we'd met, but others, countless others, speaking across time. Then Calix appeared again, not alone this time, but flanked by shimmering forms. The Guardians. "The moment has come," he said. "The pact is not a ritual of words, but of surrender." He motioned to the empty space within the circle. To stand as guardians means giving up certainty, replacing it with vigilance, with sacrifice, with the weight of knowing. It means letting go of the life you had planned. I looked to Clara. We were already so far from who we were before this began. Our hands had touched relics older than this country. We had spoken with the dead. We had been changed. "I accept," I said. "So do I," Clara followed. The moment we stepped into the circle, a wind rose from the earth itself. The sigils ignited in pale blue fire. The chamber seemed to tilt, then right itself, and the voices fell silent all at once, as if the dead finally were listening. A surge of energy passed through me, cold and ancient, yet not cruel. It was like being shown every moment that had ever mattered in this city's hidden history. Pain, love, fury, protection. Then it was gone. The light faded. Calix and the Guardians vanished, leaving only the echo of their presence in the stone. The dais cracked slightly beneath our feet, sealing the pact. We were alone again, or not quite. Outside, the wind had shifted. The air was warmer. The balance, at least for now, had been restored, but deep inside I knew something else had awakened that night. Something watching, waiting. The days following the pact passed in a haze of silence and subtle transformation. Clara and I returned from the Tomb of Echoes, not as we were, but as something more and less. Our bodies felt the same, but our senses had deepened. At night, we could hear the shift of ley lines beneath the city, like deep rivers running beneath stone. The voices of spirits came more clearly now, no longer fragmented whispers, but full sentences, sometimes questions, sometimes warnings. The veil between the living and the dead wasn't just thin. It barely existed for us anymore. We spent our mornings documenting everything we could remember from the pact. The way the chamber had lit with fireless flame, the faces of the Guardians, the way the sigils had carved themselves, not just into the dais, but into our minds. We began mapping the ley lines in greater detail, now feeling their currents with terrifying clarity. New Orleans pulsed beneath us like a living, sentient being. It wasn't long before the city began responding. Small disturbances broke out across the French Quarter. Strange apparitions in hotel mirrors, objects moving in locked museums, even flickers of flame rising from cobblestone streets without a spark. And people were noticing. Local papers wrote them off as gas leaks, pranksters, power surges. But we knew something had been stirred when we made the pact, and the city wasn't just waking, it was stretching, testing itself. And us. That's when the visions began. They didn't come in dreams, but in daylight. While writing, walking, even during conversations, sudden flashes of fire, flood, and a strange shadow rising from beneath the river. In each vision, the skyline of New Orleans darkened, overtaken by a cloud shaped like a broken crown. And always, at the center of it all, the same face, Calix, but twisted, hollowed. The protector had become something else. We returned to St. Louis Cemetery, desperate to understand what was coming. At Genevieve's tomb, the air was heavy with static, as though the city itself was bracing for a storm. As we stood there, the ground beneath our feet hummed with urgency. Then, from behind a row of tombs, she appeared, Helene. But she looked different. Her light had dimmed. Her voice trembled. "He has broken the bond," she whispered. "Calix has seen beyond the veil of guardianship. He has tasted power unmeant for our kind." We listened in stunned silence. Calix seeks to sever the ley lines and recreate them in his image. He believes the balance is flawed, that humanity doesn't deserve its protection. He's no longer a watcher. He's becoming something darker, something hungry. The prophecy we had heard whispers of in Genevieve's diary, the warnings scratched into the back of the serpent's chest, the warnings from Marguerite. Suddenly, it all made sense. We hadn't just inherited a legacy, we had inherited a war. The weight of Helene's warning sat heavy between us as we walked back through St. Louis Cemetery, the ground underfoot vibrating faintly as though responding to our very thoughts. Calix's transformation into something darker, something unchecked, was not just a betrayal, it was a shift in the very essence of what we thought we were protecting. Clara was the first to speak. "If he's corrupted the ley lines, we need to intercept before he reshapes them, or worse, breaks them entirely." Back at our apartment near Esplanade Avenue, we spread the updated ley line map on the floor. We could feel it now, 3 convergence points pulsing erratically, places where the energy once flowed cleanly, but now throbbed with imbalance. 1. In the Marigny, near the ruins of an old church, one near Congo Square, and the last deep beneath the Mississippi River, marked only by an ancient X, faded almost to nothing. We had no time for strategy. That night, we headed to the Marigny. The old church had been abandoned for years, now little more than a skeleton of beams and shattered glass. But the moment we stepped onto the grounds, it was like stepping into a living heart. The pulsing was real now, a deep sound in our bones. Clara reached for the sigil stone Marguerite had given her, and it glowed, dim at first, then bright enough to throw shadows. In the center of the church, where the altar once stood, was Calix. Only it wasn't him anymore. His form still flickered, with the silver of the ley lines, but now it bled into black smoke, wrapping around him like armor. His face, once regal, was gaunt, hollowed. The Watcher was gone. What stood before us was something born of broken pacts and unchecked power. "You came," he said, his voice fractured. "But you're too late. The bond has evolved. You two still serve balance. I've learned to master it. We didn't come to stop balance," Clara said. "We came to stop you." He smiled, and the church shook. Then, with a flash of light, the relics in our packs ignited. The serpent, the crescent, and the pelican. Each rose into the air, circling us like sentinels. Their combined energy pushed against Calix's storm of darkness, and for the first time, his confidence faltered. I stepped forward, summoning every ounce of the pact inside me. "You were chosen to protect this city, not rule it." His eyes burned white. "Then protect it from me." The ground split beneath our feet. Wind tore through the church as the past and present collided. Ghosts filled the rafters. Helene, Geneviève, Marguerite, even Jean-Baptiste, they appeared like firelight, surrounding Calix in a circle of their own making. Clara and I stood within it, relics blazing around us, not fighting with force, but with memory, of oaths kept, of blood spilled for love, of quiet lives lived in service to something greater. Calix screamed, the relics struck all at once, light slamming into shadow, and then silence. When the light faded, he was gone. No smoke, no shadow, only the breeze through shattered windows and the smell of ashes. We stepped out into the early morning light, changed again. The relics were dim now, their duty fulfilled. But the ley lines, once humming with chaos, were steady, clear. The city was safe, for now. We knew better than to think the work was done. There were still tablets hidden, still spirits who needed guidance, still truths waiting beneath the soil, etched in stone and echo. But as we crossed Esplanade, tired and hollowed, the bells of St. Louis Cathedral rang in the distance. Not a warning, a welcome.